Hey guys, what is up? It is your friendly neighborhood Ubergoose here, back again with another Isaac Brig run. This time we're starting with the inner eye triple shot. I was gonna start with technology, and then I fat fingered the space button. So here we are. It re-rolled into triple shot, which is still a fine item. I did kind of want to do technology, but whatever. This will be all right. You know, I'll get over it. I'll survive. Who am I? I'm sorry. I'm having a moment where I just can't think of things. Like, I can think of things, but it's not like an immediate conversation topic. But I guess since I've already set it up in a really weird way, I might as well go right into it. Basically, I was doing some thinking, and I reached the conclusion that I'm not a very articulate person. Weird, I know. Stumbling over my words constantly. Bizarre that I'd consider myself not articulate. But it's a very frustrating thing, not being articulate. I'd say the majority of people who are inarticulate in general don't have a problem with being inarticulate, for the simple fact that they don't, you know, understand they're being inarticulate. And I'm not trying to use that to be like, hey, look at how fucking smart I am. I just mean, like, my articulation issues bother me deeply, right? Like on an incredibly deep level. Because I understand probably more on topics than I seem to, because I can't properly put my thoughts into words, which is what articulation is on a basic level. So I tend to sound not as smart, not as educated on subjects as I actually am. I guess I'll grab this battery because there's no reason not to. And again, I'm not trying to say this like, I never mean to try and make myself look better, right? I don't, because I don't give a shit. If you think that I'm a shit-eating scumbag, then you can think that, and I'm not going to stop you. But that's basically, that's not the point of what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's very frustrating to not be able to properly articulate, to turn my thoughts into words in order to communicate with other human beings. Because I do, when I explain things, I do kind of boil the topic down to an incredibly basic level. Because not only does that work for the majority of people, you know, it just is a much easier thing to understand for the majority of people, but also I do it because those are the words that I know how to use best, you know? It's not that I don't know big words. It's that I just don't really, I guess, have the capacity to put them into the correct context that they work in entirely correctly, you know? And it's a very weird place to be, where I want to say something, but I can't say it the way I want to say it. That's the best way I can describe it. So in case I'm being incredibly inarticulate in my explanation of how I feel that I am inarticulate, you know, basically I have no idea what I'm saying. It's a very frustrating thing that I was thinking about today, because it came up because I was talking to my mom about something. I don't even remember what it was, but I was talking to her about it. And as we were talking, it was very clear that there was like a communicational disconnect between us. Now, I don't know if that's just the fact that I considered it possible to be a few things. One is the fact that I'm just not articulate enough. Another, which I think is maybe more likely, but I'm not certain, is that the way that my mom treats communication and the way I treat communication are very different things. Nice. And what I mean by that, because that itself is fairly vague. Transcendence is great, by the way. So is Spoonbender. So what I mean by that is my mom sees communication as intent, I suppose. So rather than just taking words as words, she takes them as what is behind the word, right? So, for example, I'll say, hey, do we have any plans for dinner? And she's like, no, there's frozen pizza in the freezer. And I'm like, that's not, you could just have said no, right? She thought that I was saying something along the lines of, hey, you know, what can I eat? Or something like that. When I literally just asked, do we have plans for dinner? Because the answer is no, I will make my own food. If the answer is yes, then I'll work with that, right? And like, that's just a small snippet of me and my mom's miscommunication problems, I guess. It's not like to a point where I'd consider it a problem. It's just occasionally we just kind of, we speak the same language to each other, but we clearly don't understand what the other one means. Because I do just mean, when I ask a question, I want the answer to the question. That's it, you know. I don't imply anything with my questions generally. I do tend to be a passive-aggressive kind of person. Unfortunately, I really dislike that part about myself, but it's a really fucking hard thing to stop. And in doing that, I understand, you know, in the whole, in the context of being passive-aggressive, it would make sense that a question is more than literally just a question, right? Like, that makes perfect sense. But most of the time, unless I'm pissed off at somebody, if I'm asking a question, I just want an answer to the question. I don't want anything else. I just want the answer to the question. If I'm pissed off at somebody, fuck if I know. I don't understand myself when I'm all pissed. Doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it sucks. So, I mean, how do I say no? I'm weak. I'm weak. I can't say no. But yeah, so it's like when I talk to my mom about things, just things in general, pretty much, we very frequently will have a clear disconnect, you know? Like, she'll ask me a question, I'll answer it, and then she, like, expects more, and I'm like, what? I mean, I answered. And then I'll ask a question, and then she gives me more. It pretty much is just that our ideas of what questions are meant for don't quite fully line up. Which is very frustrating on occasion, but yeah, whatever. I can't stay mad at my parents for very long. They've never done anything to, like, really piss me off at all, really. Like, I mean, they're very understanding, they're very caring people. And I mean, I do love to be around them, even though occasionally it does get difficult to have conversations with my mom, specifically. But I don't know. I can't hate my parents. I gotta... First of all, I gotta open this, but... Oh, Dr. Pepper. So good. But yeah, I mean, I have to appreciate my parents for all the shit they've done in my life, right? I'll never understand people who don't really have, like, major problems with their parents. Like, you know, specifically I'm referring to the middle-class, first-world problem type people. Which I would consider, you know, I'd consider myself the non-complaining part of that population, if that makes sense. So, like, you know, ugh, my mom took away my laptop for a week. Ugh! I just hate her. Fine. Shut up. If your parents bought you that fucking laptop, you bet your fucking ass they can take it away if you do something stupid as fuck. That's why I buy my own shit, first of all. But I mean, my parents don't. They really never did, like, take stuff away. At most, they, like, threatened to try and get me and my brother to do something, but it never really proceeded to the actual stage of them taking it away, because me and my brother weren't shitheads. Okay, we weren't entirely shitheads. I'm not going to say that we're not shitheads in general. And of course, you'll notice I'm using the present tense now. Because we're shitheads, but whatever. It doesn't matter. Yeah, fuck that. Yeah, so, like, there's so many people who are like, you know, I'll never understand people who want to, like, run away from home, right? In their, like, teens and shit. Like, I don't get it, man. What do you think's gonna happen when you run away from home? Suddenly your life's gonna be better? And it could be. Sick. It could be. Like, maybe you are actually in, like, an abusive home, but, again, I'm mostly referring to people who are first world problem types who complain about, you know, there not being fresh milk in the fridge or something. That type of people. Like, don't get me wrong, if you're in an abusive home or anything, don't feel guilted into staying there because, well, they're my parents and I have to love them. I mean, like, you know, there's... when it comes to sweeping statements are always inaccurate. Get it? Do you get it? I think I made that joke in, like, an episode 20 or something. But, I mean, it's true. Like, absolute statements, right, are so... Fuck off. What the fuck? I can't damage them. I can't... Okay, alright. What the fuck? Why was I coming up short by a fucking pixel every shot? Why? I don't get it. The charge time on these knives is just varying room to room. It's pissing me off. Anyway. Yeah, like, sweeping statements, just general statements about an entire thing, an entire anything, will have exceptions. So when you hear somebody say, you know, fucking... the first thing that popped into my head was, all men are rapists. And, like, I mean, that's, like, demonstrably false. But also, you know, let's take that as if it were, you know, actually a more accurate statement than it is. But, you know, even in that case, even in the case where, like, 99% of men are rapists, the statement's inaccurate, right? And again, that's not even remotely close to what the world is like, but whatever. That's pretty good. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna wait like 4 minutes, and then we're gonna shoot that out. And apparently, we're gonna home in on the tiny little red fly and fuck ourselves right in the bum hole. It's gonna be gross. Well, at the very least, bosses get one shot. It's just every other non-boss room sucks ass. This sure isn't that good. That's pretty good, though. 48-hour energy pill. Yeah, let's roll with it. But yeah, so, you know, if I'm saying something along the lines of, like, everyone should love their parents, obviously I'm implying the exception of if your parents are horrific people. Which does happen, unfortunately. A lot more often than it really should. But I don't have to deal with that, so I would consider myself lucky, and everything's great. Anyway, moving on. Let's be less serious. Seriousness is a bit overrated, you know? I don't know what to talk about that's not serious. I was watching. Oh, that's right. Okay, I was gonna tweet about this, and then I decided against it. But if you haven't already, watch the return episode of the Value Town podcast. This is if you play Hearthstone. You should watch this because it is interesting what the players. Because in Value Town, I don't know. I never really watched any of their podcasts or listened to any of their podcasts before this one. It's a good card to pick up. So I don't know if it's the same cast every time, or if it's different or whatever. I'm pretty sure it's the same cast, right? Okay, so the shop is this way. So it's Kibler, Trump, and Reynad. And first of all, Reynad is a very unique person. My opinion of Reynad changes every day. It's funny because I first discovered him when he was first streaming Magic the Gathering. Had like 20 viewers, right? That's when I discovered Reynad. He was streaming Magic Online, of course, and he was getting salty because he was upset that his computer was causing frame drops. And I tried to offer him tech advice in chat, and he was like, no, that can't be it, I need a new computer. And he like had a donation fund for a new computer. And I'm like, no, it's because, I mean, I can tell, I can literally diagnose this from here. You're dropping frames because you have the bitrate set too high. You probably don't even need like more than 500 bitrate for Magic the Gathering Online. And he's like, no, that can't be it. I need a new computer. My computer's so old. And I'm like, yeah, maybe you do need a new computer, but I don't think these people have to pay for it. Whatever. So the first sort of reaction I had towards Reynad was fairly negative. And then I found out he moved to Hearthstone, and because I didn't play Hearthstone at the time, I'm like, good fucking riddance. And then I came to Hearthstone later, and now I'm like, well, that sure is awkward. But he's a very bizarre person, and I think the reason that I have such a negative sort of opinion of him is that I see so much of myself in him, you know? Like, a lot of his sort of interactions with other people are, like, literally what I've done verbatim. And I think he's older than me. I don't know, he's like 23 or something like that. I don't know actual age. I'm just kind of gauging based on the way he talks and how he looks and shit. So I'm going to assume he's in his early 20s. Which, as long as he's older than 21, he's older than me. I am 21, by the way. That's a question that seems to pop up no matter how many times I answer it. But, anyway. Yeah, so I think the reason that I dislike him so much is because he's all the things that I dislike about myself, right? Like, he's very socially, not inept, but, you know, not great in social situations, which is, you know, me verbatim. So it's kind of weird seeing somebody else being the same as you know? I generally dislike people that are similar to me, right? If somebody's similar to me, I dislike them. Kind of just, you know, immediately. I just don't like them. And I don't know exactly what that is, but regardless, I think Reynad has a lot of good points when it comes to Hearthstone. I think he definitely has like the correct ideas in general about Hearthstone. I think that he understands the game a lot more than a lot of other people do. So I do value his opinion on Hearthstone related things very high, honestly. I'm gonna grab this and then I'm gonna reroll. How many? I have like no Guppy items, right? Alright, fuck it then. So yeah, I think Reynad has a very, very solid understanding of how Hearthstone works, which is awesome. And then Trump clearly does have a very good understanding of Hearthstone, mostly through repetition. Trump is the kind of person who, instead of being kind of innately good at something, right? Instead of just being good at Hearthstone, he works towards it, right? He's a very methodical person who most of his sort of ethic, I guess, in getting better at Hearthstone is by playing a shitload of Hearthstone and just thinking about it a lot, rather than just having, like, you know, these feelings that he bases a lot of things on, which I think not a lot of Hearthstone players do that. Kalento's another one who does that quite often. Obviously, Life Coach is probably the definition of methodical. If you look up methodical in the dictionary, you will see a picture of Life Coach. But like that's the strength that Trump brings to the table in that podcast. And then Kibler, if you don't know who Kibler is, first of all, shame on you. Secondly, there is a reason he is one of the most well-respected card game players just in general. Like, you know, in Magic, it was like, who is your favorite Magic player? And like 99% of people would say Kibler, and then the other 1% would say LSV or PVDDR, or maybe Conley Woods. But like pretty much everybody, it was Kibler and then everybody else, right? Like that's kind of how it worked. So he's very well respected because he has a great attitude about card games. Like he understands variance happens and it's just part of the game. And he brought up a really good point on the return podcast, the return episode of the Value Town podcast. He brought up a really good point. They were talking about the RNG in Hearthstone, which I've talked about before, and I think Hearthstone RNG, in general, the variance in Hearthstone is still, even with all the popular RNG spells, it is still a much lower extent of variance than is present in even Magic the Gathering, which has, you know, no random effects. It's just card draw variance. And I stand by that. And the thing is, it's very interesting hearing Kibler talk about it as a, you know, Magic the Gathering Pro Tour Hall of Famer, which is a very, very impressive title, by the way. But it is great hearing his input, because he pretty much was of a very similar opinion, a similar stance to me, in that Hearthstone, if it didn't have all of these wacky effects, all of these crazy variance-related effects, such as, you know, Implosion, or Knife Juggler, or something like that, or Animal Companion, you know, those are the big ones. If it didn't have effects like that, then the game would just be much more deterministic. Because the thing is, right, with 30 cards in your deck, and there are cards that draw more cards, it is not unusual to see every card in your deck, right? It is not unusual. Now, obviously, if you're Face Hunter, it would be a bit unusual, but, you know, most decks that are not a straight rush 'em down aggro deck, such as Face Hunter or, you know, Eboladin, I think is what people tend to call that, the aggro paladin deck. You know, as long as you're not a deck like that, it is a very non-unusual occurrence to see every card in your deck, right? Now, if you remove the RNG elements from things like Animal Companion and, you know, Implosion and Knife Juggler, games would be decided by which deck you're playing. Almost every time, right? Now, you might be like, well, that's fucking weird. But if you think about it, when you can compare two decks, right? When you just look at two decks and you think, if both of these decks draw all 30 cards, which one matches up better? And you can give an answer, you know, just a straight up answer, which you can in more or less every single situation, every single pair of decks. If they both were just playing with all 30 cards in their deck, you know, rather than however many they draw in a game, and all of the cards there were no RNG elements, right? If those are the assumptions you make, you will always be able to determine which deck will win at the end of the day. It would essentially become like chess without the strategy, if that makes sense, right? Like, there would still be strategy. There would still be little decisions that you could make if the RNG was removed and you just had to compare all 30 cards to all 30 cards. Now, here's the thing, right? The reason that this is true is because it's 30 cards instead of, for example, in Magic you have 60. Now, that's such a big deal. So you'd think, initially, when you see, well, you can have 30 cards in a deck in Hearthstone, and you can only have 2 of every card. You'd be like, well, that's exactly the same ratio to Magic the Gathering, because in Magic, you can have 4 of each card, and you have 60 cards in your deck, right? So it's the same ratio for every individual card in the deck. However, by decreasing the sample size, you introduce a much more potent sort of experience, if that makes sense, right? So you're much more likely, I mean, this isn't technically true, but, you will see, like, the outlier cases of, oh, they drew every insert card here. You'll see those outlier cases much more frequently in Hearthstone than you will in Magic, just because it's, a smaller amount of cards, and also card draw in Magic compared to Hearthstone, they're actually incredibly comparable numbers. For example, in Magic, there's one of the cards that they like to reprint in Standard a lot is Divination, which is a 3-mana draw 2. Simple. That's Arcane Intellect, right? But in Magic, you have 60 cards in your deck. In Hearthstone, you have 30, right? So you're literally doubling the drawing power of Divination when you port it directly to Hearthstone, right? So you just see the 30 cards much more often. So without these random effects, then all of the interactions that you have will essentially be scripted, and every game will just come down to, who drew better. Or in some cases, it'll, like I said earlier, it'll just be who has the better matchup, right? Like if I'm playing Handlock against Patron Warrior, well, look at that. I fucking won because I'm Handlock against Patron Warrior, and there's no, chance that he'll beat me. And I know that's a pretty bad example because those decks don't tend to run randomness at all. Any random cards? I think Handlock occasionally. Do they even play Bane of Doom anymore? There was like a time where they did, but the point is the random effects. Without them, the game would be very deterministic. But with them, it allows you to actually have a game, have this interaction. And I would highly recommend listening to that podcast, specifically that chunk of that podcast, to hear the full thoughts, specifically from Kibler and Trump on it. So, because Rain he was pretty salty about RNG. Mostly he hates Knife Juggler a lot. But it was very cool hearing Kibler's thoughts on the subject. Anyway, sorry, that got really rambly and probably inarticulate as fuck. Whoa, throwback to the start of the episode. That's right. Go full circle on this show. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already so you can see more Isaac in the future and get hyped for the Afterbirth release, October 30th. Holy shit, I'm excited. I'm so excited. I just can't hide it, You feel me? Don't fucking feel me, that's nasty.